This video is a video overview generated by Google Notebook LM, based on a fictional interview article I quietly wrote regarding the entertainment industry controversy, centered on actor Mr. Jiro Sato and actress Ms. Ai Hashimoto, who are currently a hot topic in Japan.
Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we are diving into a really fascinating interview with cultural commentator Quiet Beef. We're looking at his take on the highly publicized Hashimoto and Sato scandal. Now, we're not just going to rehash the surface-level celebrity gossip that's been plastered all over the headlines. We're actually bypassing all of that. Instead, we're going to peel back the layers to uncover the much deeper societal and corporate critiques hidden just beneath the surface of this whole incident. Honestly, it's a total masterclass in how media narratives, human psychology, and absolute corporate mismanagement all collide into one big mess. So here is our roadmap for today. We'll quickly cover the scandal's premise, the media's narrative, something called amygdala fastballs, the telephone game, the true target of the public's anger, and finally, what all of this means for the future of Fuji TV. All right, let's jump right into part one. The scandal's premise. Without evidence, the truth is completely hidden. The core argument Quiet Beef makes right out of the gate is that without absolute hard evidence, the truth is, well, entirely hidden. He illustrates this with a brilliant quote saying, "A single human being is a 7-quadrillion-page private novel. Can you read such a masterpiece to the end?" I mean, think about that scale for a second. Claiming that we somehow know a celebrity's true character just from their limited exposure on TV, it's not just impossible, it's honestly pretty arrogant. We naturally love to use cherry-picked anecdotes to define people, right? Like Quiet Beef mentions this story floating around about Sato scraping his brand new BMW and then making a self-deprecating joke just to keep the TV crew smiling. People grab onto stories like that and say, see, he's a good guy. But Quiet Beef argues that when you're trying to find the truth behind a serious harassment scandal, stuff like that is just pure noise. Unless we have cold, hard evidence, like unedited audio or a video recording, the absolute truth of what went down between Hashimoto and Sato is literally known only to the two of them. Everything else we hear, it's just guesswork. Moving on to part two, the media's narrative and the sheer power of the loudest voice. So early on in the scandal, a very specific narrative took over. We had a loudest voice situation driven by publications like Bunshun, who initially heavily favored Hashimoto. You combine that kind of media influence with massive agency outrage, and Sato was put at an almost insurmountable disadvantage right from the starting line. But contrasting that loud narrative is the unseen reality, the hidden facts that you and I, the general public, simply don't have access to. To put this dynamic into perspective, Quiet Beef neutrally draws a parallel to his view on the 2020 US election. He argues that in both situations, there was a massive disconnect between a highly coordinated media narrative and the actual unseen reality on the ground. The big takeaway here is that when a one-sided narrative gets loud enough and spreads far enough, it can completely drown out any nuance. It railroads public perception before the actual facts are even gathered. Which brings us to part three, amygdala fastballs and noise. This is where we look at how the internet reacts to these scandals in real time, and it's fascinating. Quiet Beef uses this really colorful psychological metaphor, the amygdala straight pitch, or what you might call the lizard brain. When thousands of people jump online to hurl vitriol and harass these actors, they aren't using their prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that handles logic, reason, and understanding social consequences. Nope, they are literally throwing emotional fastballs straight from the amygdala, the most primitive, reactionary part of the brain. Quiet Beef actually offers this as a piece of advice. He says that if you can recognize online outrage as just primitive lizard brain activity, it becomes a superpower. By understanding that these toxic, dogpiling feedback loops are just base emotional reflexes, you can protect your own mental health and just choose to step away from the noise entirely. All right, part four, the telephone game and mismanagement. Let's zoom out from the public's reaction and look at the actual mechanics of the workplace. This is where the primary blame shifts entirely away from the actors and lands squarely on the network's management. Quiet Beef uses this fantastic orchestra analogy. Imagine a giant symphony playing together. Hashimoto is the bassoon player and Sato is the trombone player. Hashimoto goes to the conductor, which in this case is Fuji TV management, and asks for a safe distance because she's reasonably concerned that the trombone slide might accidentally hit her. Simple enough, right? But instead of laying down a clear, strict rule, the middlemen get involved and totally dilute the request. They abstract the message to soften the blow, so by the time the message reaches Sato, the trombone player, he just gets this vague, fluffy suggestion to be mindful. Because that vital communication was completely lost in translation, a totally preventable conflict explodes. Fuji TV fundamentally failed in their basic duty to be the conductor of this production. Now, to be fair, Sato also made a really critical error here, which Quiet Beef calls the dressing room misstep. Instead of going back through the proper channels, Sato decided to bypass management entirely and directly confront Hashimoto in her dressing room to hash it out. Quiet Beef compares this to a modern apartment noise dispute. 20 years ago, if your neighbor was playing their music too loud, you might just knock on their door to talk it out. But today, in our highly divided modern society, direct face-to-face confrontation just doesn't work safely anymore. It can escalate into a severe incident in seconds. You really have to use an intermediary like a landlord or building management. By skipping that management layer and walking right into her dressing room, Sato committed a massive modern workplace taboo that just poured gasoline on the whole situation. Let's move to part 5, the true target of anger, white-collar mismanagement. So, you might be wondering, why is the public's anger so intensely focused on this one specific entertainment scandal? Quiet Beef argues that this outrage isn't really about the actors at all. It's a proxy war. The public is actually channeling their deep, simmering frustrations with corporate elites and the government. Think about it. These executives take home massive paychecks, pay that is theoretically justified because they're the ones supposed to take responsibility when things go wrong. And yet, they avoid accountability at all costs. Instead, the frontline workers, the actors, the crew, the contractors, they face literally all the workplace risks. And the absolute second a problem arises, management immediately throws those contractors under the bus, throwing up their hands and saying, "Oh, they did that on their own." This scandal is just a vivid, infuriating reflection of a much broader societal frustration in Japan when it comes to white-collar mismanagement. And finally, part 6, the future of Fuji TV, and honestly, it's a pretty stark warning. Quiet Beef makes a really striking claim here. He says that Fuji TV executives are suffering heavily from the Dunning-Kruger effect. If you aren't familiar, that's the cognitive bias where people with low ability or low knowledge vastly overestimate how competent they are. He argues that these executives are completely, utterly blind to their own ignorance when it comes to basic corporate social responsibility. They don't know how to protect their workers, and worse, they don't even realize that they don't know. They are just confidently steering the ship into this incredibly toxic management style. Which leads us to a timeline, 5 to 10 years. That's exactly how long Quiet Beef predicts it will take for a major legacy network like Fuji TV to face liquidation or forced restructuring. I mean, television viewership is dropping at light speed right now. Ratings are plummeting, and the traditional broadcasting model is basically on life support. He points out that Fuji TV is already selling off its profitable real estate assets to investment entities like the Murakami Fund, literally just to stay afloat. If they don't fundamentally fix their human resources and the way they handle content creation, they could literally cease to exist as a primary cultural force by the end of the decade. Which leaves us with this final, deeply provocative question. If a network refuses to protect its talent, who is going to be left to actually create the content? If talent agencies and top-tier actors see that a network will immediately cut them loose just to protect some corporate executive at the first sign of trouble, the best creators simply are not going to work with them anymore. The core message of this whole explainer is clear. Corporate survival depends entirely on genuine accountability. Without it, the future of traditional media looks a lot like a total collapse. It's definitely something to ponder the next time you see a massive media scandal unfolding on your feed. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and as always, keep questioning the narrative.